Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you, and this is a new CRKT for this year. This is a Flavio Acoma design, sort of in the same vein as his earlier model, the Fossil, which has been very, very popular for CRKT, and I think generally speaking with good reason. There has been one issue. The name on this guy is also, you can see here, comes from a prehistoric alligator, and it is the Carnufex, okay? Now I've got to tell you guys, in practicing for this video, about 10 times I have said this the wrong way and reversed those two letters, the U and the E. And since I don't want this video to be tagged as mature content or not advertiser friendly or something like that, I'm really going to try hard not to do it this time. So please bear with me on my pronunciation. I don't know why. I sort of have some kind of mental barrier where I cannot pronounce the name properly. So let's go ahead and get into this. Starting off with the fact that what attracted me to this knife was the design. I liked the Fossil, and this seemed like, you know, it's in a similar vein but a little more simplified, and I think that's an improvement. If there was anything to complain about with the Fossil, it did have a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes budget knives that get too detail oriented struggle. This guy, its simplicity did attract me. There are a couple things here that I'm not crazy about, and we'll talk about those things in a couple of minutes here. So let's go ahead and get size and weight. This guy is 9 inches overall. 9 inches overall. The blade there is 3 and a little over 7/8. The handle is 5 and a little under 1/8. So in the end, it all comes out in the wash, and it ends up being 9 inches overall. The weight on this is actually not that bad for its size and for the material they're using. They have milled things out a little bit, and there are these FRN overlays here. Actually, these are inlays, I should say. This is milled out to accommodate that. And because of that, they do save a little bit of weight, and so 5.6 ounces is not the end of the world. In fact, in pocket, this carries pretty comfortably. Now, I will say, guys, I carry around this knife quite a bit, and so compared to this, 5.6 ounces is not much. For someone who carries around something like this all the time, yeah, sure. 5.6 ounces is going to sound like an insane number. But in reality, you know, for my purposes, guys, it does not bother me. I don't mind carrying a 5.6 ounce knife. Let's go ahead and move on to the blade. The blade is kind of interesting here. We've got 8CR13 MOV blade steel, which is not wonderful, but as a budget steel, it's adequate, okay? Satin finish, which I do like. Hollow grind, which I also like. We got a recurve here and this sort of swell in the knife, creating belly sort of back here where we're used to having it straight. Now that's the similar blade design to the Fossil, and in the Fossil it was doing something a little different and it kind of stood out. In this knife I find it okay. But I would be equally happy if it didn't have it, okay? I don't think it's necessary for the overall design, but it's still there, and that's fine. And by the way, recurves don't bother me. I do probably 80% of my sharpening on Spyderco SharpMaker, and so, you know, recurve is not a big deal if you've got a SharpMaker. I only get the Edge Pro Apex out for either reprofiling or some more expensive blades. Anyway, so this blade itself, hollow grind, it works really, really well, guys. I have not had any issues whatsoever in use, and I've done a fair bit of cutting with this knife just because, you know, I've found myself carrying it a fair bit. It's a fairly budget-friendly knife, so there are a lot of times where, you know, I'm doing something that I don't want to carry something higher end, and so this has dropped into my pocket. It does carry quite comfortably, and it's done all the cutting that I have needed it to do, you know, just absolutely well, okay? So no big issue with the blade. The steel is, as I say, an adequate steel, and that's about all you can say for 8CR13 MOV. In terms of design, I do find this to be an attractive blade design, but as I said, not absolutely necessary for this model. And I think I mentioned it's a hollow grind, nice and thin behind the edge. Those are things that I do appreciate. All right, let's go ahead and talk about lockup and deployment. This is a stainless steel frame lock with the IKBS. You can see the symbol right there, IKBS bearings. Now I don't see IKBS in there, so maybe they're just telling us it's on bearings. I'm not sure. I'm assuming IKBS is a trademark that you'd have to use do it a specific way. It is on bearings, and I will put a picture in right here so you can take a look at those. And while you're seeing those bearings, I've got to say this knife for a little while gave me some issues just with kind of being rough. And all I did, I took the knife apart, I cleaned things up a little bit, and it's, 100 times better. Now, I know that probably many of you watching don't take your knives apart. I'm gonna do a video on that coming up, top 5 maintenance or something like that. And taking your knives apart, I do think especially if it's something simple like this, is worth your time and energy, because you will generally get a knife that functions really nicely after you've taken the time to clean it up and get everything smooth and, think about all the dirt and grime and crap and stuff that's in a typical factory where they'd be manufacturing something like this. And I think you can understand the need to clean that pivot out a little bit when you first get the knife. Otherwise, the lock is very good. It's comfortable to actuate. Don't have any issues with it. It locks up far enough. Let's see, a little past 50% maybe there. Let's see if you can see the same thing I'm seeing. A little past 50%, but when it's steel on steel, that doesn't bother me in the least. Nice comfortable bit of jimping here that allows me to get a hold of it easily. Flips really well. The cool thing about this is you can also deploy it with a spider flick. Hold on, there you go. Or even roll it out with your thumb. I have no problem doing that. So the detent is set actually pretty well. Now this is CRKT, so I can't say that every single one will be set the same way, but this one is nearly perfect. I mean, it allows me to flip the knife out with some authority. It also allows me to spider flick it and thumb roll it. So you know what I mean? That's pretty well done. I have a lot of knives where even if they've accommodated some other opening mechanisms other than the flipper, when the detent gets so hard only the flipper works, it's essentially a flipper only at that point. And this one, it's pretty impressive that it can open in all of those different ways. So I got to give them credit there. And the bearings are pretty smooth. Now, one of the things that lots and lots of people commented on when the Fossil came out was how smooth the Fossil was. And this is maybe not quite there. It's pretty darn good, but the Fossil felt, like smoother than any knife in its class. And this, I wouldn't quite go to that length. It's good, okay? It's definitely very nice, drops closed pretty well. But it's not as smooth, as impressive quite as the Fossil was. And let me say that the later generations of the Fossil have not been as good either as the first generation was. So there we go. That's lockup and deployment. Very good. Nice and solid, no blade play in any direction. Now that's a little easier to achieve with bearings. I'm fully aware of that. But the bearings here are done fairly well, and you had a chance to take a look at those a few minutes ago. Let's finally get to the handle. And this is where we're going to have a little bit more time spent. The construction, guys, it's a stainless steel frame lock. It's a backspacer, FRM backspacer. It's good, okay? I have no real complaints about the construction, especially the fact these are, they've got screws into a sleeve here, so it's steel into steel. I had no problem taking it apart, putting it back together. It stayed. The pivot screw has not wanted to come loose on me, which sometimes does happen, but this has been really good, especially with the round. It's not an unrestrained pivot anyway, but yeah, I have no big issues with the construction. Stainless steel is not my favorite, but as I say, they've done a pretty decent job of making this a light enough knife to carry comfortably. The ergonomics are very good. I have no complaint whatsoever. There are no hot spots. The grip is just enough in just about any kind of grip you could take. It's really good. And I even appreciate that they've kind of put this little swoop in here that allows my thumb to get up there and choke up. I am totally pleased with the ergonomics on this. It may even be, not maybe, it actually is better than the Fossil. So if you felt the Fossil, they're pretty good, but this I would say is even a little bit better. So, I have absolutely no complaint about that. The materials are acceptable for the price point, okay? I'm not gonna rave about them or anything. FRN is, you know, less than desirable, but it's not the end of the world. The one thing I will touch on is the aesthetics, okay? Overall, now this is a knife that, you know, we've all talked about, you know, something that's nice from far, but far from nice. Well, this knife looks fine from here, okay? As you look down on it through the camera, you go, yeah, it looks kind of cool. There's some texturing here, but when you come in close and you see that this is supposed to be like an alligator, a crocodile's back, that I think gets a little hokey, okay? A little cheesy. Same on the other side. And I would have been happy, you know, if they left it, if they've just done it back here, it would have been okay. Maybe it wouldn't have been awesome, but you know, it would have been acceptable, and then just done sort of a texture. If they had just done, see this texture right up here by the pivot? If they just done this over this whole thing, I would actually like this knife a whole lot more. And you know, if someone is so inclined, maybe you could get one and redo some other kind of inlay for here, okay? Maybe a piece of wood that you really like, or especially just get a piece of G10 to the right width and cut it to fit in there. I think that would work really well. And CRKT, if you're watching this, the other thing that would be cool about this is if you provided options. So I could get this in black or blue or yellow or green or brown or, you know, anything else. Because it is just a simple little FRN inlay that you could switch out pretty easily. So that's the big thing that puts me off, guys, is just this, what I'm going to call pretty hokey crocodile back inlay. I think that really does take a lot away from otherwise what's a pretty well done knife. All right. Back here we have a pocket clip that works really, really well. Just a simple bent over clip. Absolutely effective. It goes in and out of pocket super, super easily. It retains really well. The one thing I do question is it would have been pretty easy to just put two holes right here. I mean, it's already stainless steel. You wouldn't have had to do much. So I'm a little surprised that they didn't, but this is tip up, right side carry only. And I really would have suspected them to do a left side option, but they opted out of that. So sorry lefties, as a lot of reviewers say, just no option for you guys on this guy. So everything else, as I say, except for this, is completely acceptable, and I have no big issue with it. And overall, I really kind of like the knife. Let's get to some comparisons. And this is an area that's pretty tough, okay? In the budget market, there are a lot of great knives. Now, here is the T109 Flying Shark. I think these guys are going to cost a little more. The blade steel is quite a big step up. The overall level of quality is a little bit better, guys. Just the fit and finish, the extra milling on the inside, even the overall design. Now let me use this to make my point about this. Had they just done a piece of mock carbon fiber like this, perfect, right? I would have been like, yep, that's awesome, total win, okay? But there's one comparison for you, the Flying Shark. Here's another comparison. Again, a knife that is pretty well built. The biggest complaint I had about this knife, there's some similarities here in that the only thing I complained about here was aesthetics as well. I'm not crazy about the bead blast, but otherwise very impressed. Here, I'm not crazy about the crocodile thing, but otherwise very impressed. Now the steel, of course, is an upgrade, and this may be a little cheaper than this. Now, because that does cause a bit of a problem for me because the fit and finish on this is very good. They've heavily milled out the handle internally, and you're getting a way upgraded steel. 14C28N compared to 8CR13 MOV is a significant difference, okay? Really is. You're going to get much better performance over here. What else have we got? Oh, I meant to, guys, throw in a pair of two just because everyone's familiar with that. So you can see this is a very large knife, right? There you go. What else have we got? Two or a couple more. Now, this is a knife I brought in a minute ago. This is the Rake knives, just this little guy, the 831. And here's the thing. If you're used to carrying something like this, you know, you're going to look at this and go, my goodness, who would carry that monstrosity? Okay, so, and vice versa. If you always carry something like this, you're going to look at this and go, yeah, that's way too small. So just be aware that there's a personal preference element here when it comes to size and weight on knives. There is the steel wheel cut jack, and then the real steel E802 Horus. So The one thing I didn't bring in was a Rat Model 1, and I just don't have one with me. So we're gonna have to make do without the Rat 1 in this particular review. Overall, guys, I've got to say that this is a pretty well done knife. I really can't pick on it too much. They've kept it pretty simple. They've done a good job with the action. They've done a good job with the detent. I especially appreciate that everything works. I like that I can spider flick this or open it with my thumb, that the detent is not too strong for that. The aesthetics are the one thing that puts me off a little. And I mean, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't affect the working of the knife in any way. It's got an animal thing on it. Like, it just kind of puts me off a little bit. All right. So otherwise, I really think they've done a fine job here. This knife is very comfortable to carry. It cuts very well for what it is. As I say, the only things I would change is get rid of this and upgrade the steel. And I would love it, guys, if any of you US companies that are doing overseas knives are watching, if you would switch over to 14C28N, it would be such a huge benefit to the community. People would be getting so much more for their dollar, okay? It would be totally awesome. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.